So all of these parts that I've painted have been drying now for a few days, and in the meantime, while they were drying, I have opened up my checkbook and ordered a lot of parts. So I've made some decisions on how I'm going to go with a lot of the upgrades. And while I'm waiting for the rest of the parts to come in, I've got a couple of them. I got a QA1 sway bar. I'm going with QA1 coilover shocks in the front end. I've received both of those, but I don't have control arms, which I opted for tubular upper control arms that are adjustable so you don't have to use alignment shims, and then tubular control arms to support the coilover shock suspension. And then I ordered a coilover rear end, several other things, a differential with different gears. I'm putting a rebuilt one in, even though there was nothing wrong with this one, because I want this car, when I'm done with it, to basically be something I can get in and drive across the country and not worry about it. Not that I plan on doing that. If I did that, I'd probably take my other one, I have a C7, but I might go a couple hundred miles to visit relatives in another state. So in the meantime, while I'm waiting for all these parts to come in, I'm going to start installing some of the parts back onto the frame that I can. For instance, the fuel tank support brace and the cross member for the differential can go back on now. If the body were on and I was changing the differential, you'd have to bolt the differential to it first and then put it up as one unit. But since the body's off, I can do it. And I'll bolt on some minor things that I can and slowly get some of these parts I've painted out of my way, so that I have a little more room to work. So what I'm going to do first is, I'm not using new bolts on everything because that would be a lot of work finding them, or a lot of expense to order a set of them, and I don't know that you'd get a complete set for everything I've done. But I have a wire wheel. I'm going to take some of the bolts, clean the rust off as I can, and then I've got some stuff that also came from Master Coat, and it may or may not be good because I've had it for 10 years, but it's unopened, and it's called Inner Panel Protector. But it says right on there that you can use it on brake lines, fasteners, or any corrosive area. So what I'm hoping to do is clean the rust that I can off of the bolts that are still pretty solid, and then coat them with this and put them in, and hopefully they'll not look too ugly. But I intend on driving the car. I'm not putting all this coilover stuff on to have it sit in a garage. So the bolts, even if I got new ones, probably going to rust right away anyway. So why go to all that aggravation trying to find them and the expense of replacing them when you already have ones that you can clean up a little bit and they'll do the job. There's a little bit of glare there from the door I have open because that stuff I'm going to plan on using on the bolts says to use it in a well-ventilated area. For the cleaning up of the rust. Have a dust mask, goggles, and I'm going to take the bolt, put in vice grips like that, clean it up best I can, switch it so I can get the rest of it, and we'll see how it works out. So that bolt's pretty clean, and if the Master Coat product protects it, it ought to look halfway as decent for a while. I may do a little bit more cleaning up on that. I see a couple spots on the end, but I'm going to do that with all the nuts and bolts. These are to the fuel tank support. I'll clean those up and then I'll show you where we're going from there. So there's a bunch of nuts and bolts that I just cleaned up, and a few observations. I'm planning on going to my local tractor supply company where they sell bulk bolts and picking up a supply of the smaller ones in various different lengths, because it does take some time to do this, but show you a little tip for if you're not sure what size a bolt is, and I wasn't about this one. So I take my wrench, and if you can see, that says 3/8 on it, and put the thread of the bolt. Now the 3/8 is for the head of the bolt, but it's a quick reference to find out the size of a bolt if you don't know it. These are 3/8 by 1 inch. Actually, it's a little less than 1 inch. These probably don't make a difference, but that's really 7/8 of an inch. So that's not a bolt that you can buy out of the bulk bin at your local tractor supply or whatever supplier you use. This is the bolt that holds up the cross member that supports the differential. And again, I wasn't sure, so turn it upside or right side up so you can read it. 7/16 right there on the handle. You can see that the Wrench fits right around that nicely. So that's a quick way to tell if you're unsure. This also is another bolt that you're probably not going to get off of the bin in a bulk supply, because it's actually 1 3/8. Now, I don't know if that's going to make a difference. You know, whether you could use 1.5 inches, or I'm sorry, 1 1/4 inches, or maybe even 1 inch. But it does go up into that pocket that holds the cross member on, and certainly 1 inch would be harder to work with because you have less room to play, or less length to play around as you're trying to insert it up into that pocket. Would 1 1/4 inches be too long and bottom out before you got the cross member tight? I don't really know, but see, that makes it, in my mind, worthwhile to clean up some of these bolts that are, especially the larger ones, because they start to come in 1/2 inch increments. So you might either have to go to a specialty Corvette shop, or maybe you can't use a bolt that you could get at your local bulk supplier. So I am going to get a bunch of 5/16, a bunch of 1/4 inch. I'll look around and see what I have, and I'll just get them in various sizes, and then I'll just put them in my bolt bin. And when I need a bolt, I usually have it, but when I need a bunch of bolts like this, maybe not. Maybe I'd run out. So I'll just buy a bunch of grade 8s, and where I can use them, I'll do that. And I will, as I said I was going to do with these, I'll dip them or coat them with that inner fender panel coating that I got from Master Coat. But I didn't want to take a trip to this store today because I got to go out later, and I have to be home before I go out. It's a whole long story, but I was anxious to start getting a couple of these pieces put up on the frame, so that's what I'm going to do next.